9:58, 14 the warhead arrives above Washington in perfect silence. Then the sky opens like a wound. A white pulse floods the avenues before anyone hears a sound. Windows turn to mirrors, then to knives. Marble facades bleach into a flat, impossible brightness. Commuters pause at crosswalks, coffee still warm in their hands, because the human brain always spends a second denying the end. In that first second, the city is not destroyed yet. It is simply shown with brutal clarity how fragile it always was. The detonation blooms high enough to maximize the kill radius and low enough to shatter the capital score. The flash outruns instinct. It reaches office towers, museum steps, school buses, and traffic cameras all at once. Skin exposed to the line of sight feels heat before the mind finds language. Birds vanish mid-flight. Drivers see the world turn white and believe, for half a heartbeat, that the sun has exploded. That confusion matters, because confusion is what modern people feel when systems fail faster than meaning can catch up. At ground zero's no dramatic fireball rolling down a street. There is only instant conversion. Glass skins of towers, paint blisters, stone spits dust, faces nearest the flash never complete their expressions. The air itself becomes a weapon, heated to an inhuman temperature, pressing outward with mechanical cruelty. In the neighborhoods nearest the burst, curtains ignite behind closed windows, hardwood floors flash, and every shadow becomes a record of someone who was standing there a moment earlier. Inside command rooms, the first sensors do not report attack in plain language. They report saturation, thermal bloom, overpressure, anomalies, abrupt signal loss. Screens flicker with numbers before operators understand the sentence those numbers form. Secure phones light up across the chain of command. Somewhere under reinforced concrete, a duty officer says the words nobody ever expects to say outside an exercise. Somewhere else, another officer asks for confirmation, even while already knowing the answer. Protocol does not panic, but the people inside it do. Their hands stay trained while their stomachs drop through the floor. Outside, the public receives no such clarity. They receive light, heat, and contradiction. One man on Constitution Avenue thinks a transformer station has exploded. A woman in DuPont Circle thinks an airliner has crashed. Parents rush toward schools without knowing whether to run inside or away. Thousands reach for phones because that is what every crisis taught them to do, and the networks begin dying under the weight of terror. The information gap opens immediately. Government feels the event as protocol. Civilians feel it as noise, rumor, and disbelief. By the second, the thermal pulse has already done most of its work. Exposed skin blisters, fabric darkens, then traffic lights fail in intersections that still physically exist. Rooftop HVAC units distort and seize. The flags over federal buildings are still waving, but the poles holding them are already heating. People who looked directly at the flash lose vision in a burst of white pain. They blink hard, expecting the image to clear. But some images never clear again. The body keeps hoping long after the physics have decided otherwise. Then the electromagnetic pulse washes outward, invisible and absolute. It reaches substations, vehicle control modules, hospital monitors, elevators, server racks, and police dispatch consoles. Some systems survive. Many do not. Cars newer than their drivers cough, stall, and become dead weight in live lanes. Backup generators attempt to wake, then trip, then fail under damaged controls. The capula's digital nervous system goes numb, in widening circles, in apartments, in office towers, screams die mit dem Mail. The city loses not only power, but confidence in what still works. At the third second, the blast front begins arriving where the flash already passed. This is when the catastrophe gains shape. Air pressure slams into building faces and pushes inward with the force of collapsing history. Windows become swarms. Doors buckle on their hinges. People standing near glass are torn down by their own reflections. Metro entrances cough debris up their stairwells. On K Street, a line of stalled cars shudders as if struck by an invisible train. What was light now becomes impact, and impact is easier for the body to understand. The White House complex does not process this as a symbolic target. It processes it as a physical one. Corridors fill with dust. Suppression systems trigger where there is still pressure to feed them. The secure rooms, meant to preserve continuity, are suddenly filled with the oldest continuity question in government: who is alive, who is reachable, and who now has authority. Staff members recite procedures they memorized years earlier. Some do it through blood. Others do it in darkness. The institution survives only if enough of its people survive to keep pretending the institution still exists. Across the Potomac, the Pentagon is close enough to feel the blast as a personal insult. Shock ripples across concrete. Communications officers switch to hardened channels and still lose half their links. Aircraft status boards update, freeze, and then go black. Somewhere in a command bay, a colonel hears two incompatible reports at once: decapitation, strike, and accidental detonation. The distinction matters strategically, but not emotionally, because once Washington has become a cratered command problem, everyone understands the same thing. This is not a local disaster. This is the doorway to a different century. The fourth second belongs to infrastructure. Water mains rupture. Gas lines vent into collapsing basements. Traffic tunnels inhale dust. Fire alarms shriek from buildings already too damaged to save. In hospitals, surgical lights die over open bodies. Ventilators switch to battery, then to silence where shielding failed. Emergency departments flood with the walking wounded before they can even name what happened to them. The city's medical system enters mass casualty mode without receiving permission. It has no choice. A nuclear strike does not ask institutions whether they are ready. The fifth second belongs to psychology. Denial breaks, and something older takes over. A lobby full of professionals stops being a workplace and becomes a herd. A packed sidewalk becomes an argument over direction, then a stampede. People scream names into dead phones. Strangers grab one another, not out of compassion alone, but out of animal calibration. If the person beside them is running, then there must still be time. If the person beside them is frozen, then perhaps freezing is somehow safer. Civilization is not erased in a flash. It is peeled away in decisions measured by seconds. At 6 seconds, the city's famous geometry starts working against it. Long avenues channel the blast. Glass corridors between towers amplify debris. Monumental open spaces offer visibility, but not shelter. The National Mall, built to represent endurance, becomes a killing ground of flying fragments and thermal exposure. Statues stand while people fall around them. Security barriers meant for bombs do nothing against the sun placed overhead. Urban design, emergency planning, and patriotic symbolism all meet the same verdict. They were never meant for this kind of mourning. At 7 seconds, people underground begin making the only decision that matters: stay put or move. Some rush deeper into basements and service corridors. Others bolt upward, desperate for family, air, or information. Both choices can kill. Fallout has not arrived yet, but the city already feels poisonous. Dust rolls down stairwells. Sprinkler water mixes with pulverized insulation and blood. Battery radios crackle with partial instructions, half-heard and often wrong. In every shelter, one person starts speaking too confidently. In every shelter, someone else believes them because uncertainty is unbearable. At 8 seconds, the first fires start joining hands. One office floor burns from flash ignition, another from severe wiring, another from spilled fuel in a loading bay. In row house neighborhoods, curtains ignite room by room, then attic by attic, carried by pressure broken windows and crosswind. The city has not become a firestorm yet, but it has received all the ingredients across blocks that were filled with policy briefings and school drop-offs minutes earlier. Flame begins writing its own map. Fire is always patient at first. That patience is what makes it terrifying. At 9 seconds, air traffic controllers who still have power stare at vanishing data and overlapping emergencies. Pilots on approach lose confidence in every instrument not independently verified. Helicopter crews try to report what they see, then realize language is too slow. Smoke rises too quickly. Radar returns become cluttered by atmospheric interference and human fear. The sky above the Capitol, normally crowded with rules, starts filling with guesses. In disasters, the public imagines the ground first. Professionals know the sky becomes its own emergency almost immediately. At 10 seconds, Washington is no longer a city managing a crisis. It is a target area producing secondary crises in every direction. Bridges jam with panicked vehicles and dead electronics. Sirens overlapped until they sound mechanical, almost calm. Whole blocks vanish from communications maps in neighborhoods untouched by the immediate overpressure. People step onto porches to stare at the growing column and whisper the same useless sentence. It cannot be real. But reality is now measured in thermal burns, collapsed facades, and the speed of a cloud nobody can yet see. The next minute is when distance becomes cruel. In suburbs, outside the lethal core, families survive the flash and assume survival means safety. They gather at windows, they film the cloud. They call relatives inside the city and hear nothing except felt connections and emergency tones. Children ask whether this is war. Adults answer too quickly because uncertainty frightens children less than silence. But silence keeps spreading. The cell towers overload, the backup systems fail, and the nation's capital begins disappearing behind a curtain of missing information. The first real enemy after the blast is not flame. It is false confidence. People believe if they are not bleeding, they are fini. They believe if the house still stands, it will remain a shelter. They believe if the government has not spoken, then the event must be contained. But fallout does not care about visible damage. It cares about wind, altitude, particle size, and where people choose to breathe. Radiation arrives without drama. It settles on roofs, playgrounds, gutters, jackets, dog fur, and open skin like ordinary dust, which makes it more dangerous than fire. Those who prepared look strange for about 5 minutes, then essential. The family with plastic sheeting, duct tape, stored water, and a crank radio suddenly seems less paranoid than everyone else. The office manager who knows where the sub-basement is becomes more valuable than an executive vice president. A retired medic with iodine tablets turns into a local authority. Preparedness changes social gravity fast. The unprepared do not merely lack supplies. They lack decision speed. And in the first hour after a strike, hesitation burns time faster than any fire. By late morning, the supermarkets outside the city center begin emptying for reasons that have little to do with hunger. People are not shopping. They are converting fear into objects. Carts filled with bottled water, batteries, canned soup, bleach, baby formula, and whatever remains on the shelf long enough to touch. ATMs freeze. Card readers stop responding. Gas pumps lock because the grid behind them is unstable. Managers try to impose limits, but limits require legitimacy, and legitimacy is collapsing one checkout lane at a time. Scarcity begins first as a rumor, then it becomes behavior. Hospitals beyond the primary blast zone inherit the moral burden of the strike. Ambulances arrive in waves. Private cars arrive faster. Patients pour out, burned, blinded, lacerated, vomiting, or eerily calm. Triage tents go up in parking lots. Hallways filled with people tagged for delayed treatment, which is often a sterile phrase for unlikely survival. Nurses reuse supplies they would never normally touch twice. Surgeons choose who receives anesthesia, who receives blood, and who receives only morphine and a curtain. Modern medicine remains alive, but suddenly medieval in its arithmetic. Law enforcement fractures by geography and by family. Officers inside the impact area become casualties or rescuers depending on the minute. Officers outside it receive impossible orders. Control traffic, maintain order, protect critical sites, stop looting, assist evacuation, preserve evidence, prepare for civil unrest. Some stay at their posts, some abandon radios and drive home through dead intersections to find spouses and children. Neither choice is simple betrayal. Nuclear events rip the badge away and expose the person underneath. The state always depends on individual obedience. Catastrophe reveals how conditional that obedience really is. By afternoon, the federal government exists in fragment. Continuity sites activate. Hardened communications routes wake up. Emergency succession plans move from binder to breathing human beings. Yet continuity is not the same as coherence. A legal chain of authority means little if transport is crippled. Data is incomplete, and key departments cannot verify their own survival. Cabinet secretaries become islands. Military aides relay instructions through damaged networks and receive silence in return. The Republic does not disappear in a cinematic instant. It becomes procedural, scattered, and haunted by the possibility that procedure may no longer be enough. Abroad, every capital with satellites and signals intelligence sees the same plume and asks the same terrifying question. Is this the only strike? That question matters more than blame in the first hour. NATO. Emergency channels open. Strategic forces review posture. Early warning centers compare thermal signatures, launch tracks, and radar noise. Ambassadors are summoned from beds, cars, safe houses, and conference rooms. No leader wants to overreact. No leader dares underreact. The world's most dangerous decisions are often made when information is incomplete and time feels artificially short. Markets react before politicians finish their first secure briefing. Trading halts, futures collapse. Insurance models become historical fiction. Data centers reroute traffic around damaged nodes. Then discovered human institutions using that traffic are no longer making rational requests. Media outlets lose feeds, then fill the gaps with speculation, archived footage, and experts speaking too confidently into cameras. Somewhere, a rumor of multiple incoming weapons trends faster than any correction. Information at this moment is poison disguised as clarity. People consume it anyway because uncertainty feels worse than lies. In neighborhoods spared the worst structural damage, a quieter transformation begins. Neighbors who barely spoke last week suddenly share tools, filters, and flashlight batteries. Others nail boards over windows, and refuse eye contact. Apartment buildings become little nations, governed by whoever controls stairwells, water access, or generator fuel. Small kindnesses multiply beside small cruelties. One family takes in strangers from the road. Another hides supplies while telling everyone else nothing remains. Social collapse does not happen evenly. It arrives apartment by apartment, block by block, depending on who trusts whom and how long that trust lasts. Evening brings no comfort. Smoke dims the horizon. Streetlights stay dead across wide sections of the region. The usual metropolitan glow vanishes, replaced by fire, emergencies, and occasional headlights from vehicles old enough to survive electronic shock. That darkness changes people. It makes every distant shout sound closer. It makes every empty intersection feel lawless. It reminds millions that urban safety was partly optical, a confidence created by constant illumination. When the light goes out, the city stops feeling permanent. It feels borrowed. The invisible threats now begin sorting survivors from casualties. Fallout drifts according to winds that ordinary residents never tracked before. Those in sealed interiors with improvised filtration gain hours, maybe days. Those who move outside for a better view, to search for family, or to stand in relief lines receive silent doses they will only understand later. Nausea begins. Headache. Skin reddens in patterns no one expects. Children tire too quickly. Pets collapse, first in some homes, which is often how families realize the air itself may now be a verdict. Then comes the second psychological break. The first was panic. The second is realization. People understand this is not an explosion with cleanup crews behind it. This is not a storm, not a riot, not a blackout waiting for utility trucks. Washington is the command center of a nation, and now that center is injured in public, every unanswered question grows teeth. Was it one weapon? Was retaliation launched? Will more cities burn before dawn? Each uncertainty corrodes behavior. The ordinary future, with meetings and flights and school lunchboxes, begins feeling embarrassingly obsolete. Military convoys start moving toward the region, but movement is no guarantee of access. Roads choke with abandoned cars, civilian flight, damaged overpasses, and ad hoc checkpoints. Helicopters search for landing zones and find smoke, debris, and contradictory security reports. National Guard units deploy into a landscape where maps still show streets that no longer function as streets. Aid arrives as an intention before it arrives as food, medicine, or shelter. Many survivors spend hours hearing that help is coming. For thousands, those hours are longer than the remaining window to be saved. Inside shelters, the old hierarchy dissolves and a brutal new one takes shape. The person with water decides more than the person with status. The person who keeps calm controls mood like a weapon. The person who knows radiation basics can stop a fatal mistake with one sentence. Arguments break out over air vents, exits, contaminated shoes, crying children, and who is allowed through the door. Every enclosed space becomes a study in compressed human nature. Fear makes some people obedient. It makes others predatory. Most become both, depending on the hour. As midnight approaches, the geopolitical shadow lengthens over the physical ruin. Submarines shift posture. Bombers receive coded traffic. Radar operators in multiple hemispheres spend the night hunting for meaning inside electronic clutter. Diplomats beg for direct lines to stay open. Generals speak in probabilities because certainty is gone. One capital's defensive move resembles another capital's prelude to retaliation.